Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of Cabinet on Monday, the 10th of March. Also, I'd like to welcome Councillor Marsh, Councillor Edwards, and Councillor Kenny, who I know will be wishing to make a few comments as we go through the agenda, and also welcome Councillor Eaves and Councillor Bates. The first item on the agenda is to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. I see that there are none. And the second is to receive apologies for absence. We are all present. Item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 3rd of February to be agreed by general affirmation. Are they agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 4 is to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business, and I have none, which then moves us on to agenda item 5. I would like to say that we do have a very full agenda this afternoon, and I know and hope that we will give each item its due and proper attention. So agenda item number 5 is Clare Hall, procurement of a cultural operator. I'd like to go first of all, if I may, to Councillor Kenny, then Councillor Edwards and Councillor Marsh, if they wish to make any comments. Before we do, Councillor Kenny, sorry, just to confirm that we received the email with your notes, and all members of the Cabinet have read and considered the report, the comments you made in your notes.
Okay, well, I believe that the report and its recommendations should not be approved by the Cabinet today because it fails to progress the aims and objectives of the Clare Hall regeneration project as they were outlined to the public in the last consultation in 2023. I recommend that the Cabinet refer it back to officers and to the Clare Hall Executive Steering Group for further work with the aim of bringing forward proposals that are closer to the stated vision for the Clare Hall site. In my view, there are 6 areas in which the report's proposals fall short. Number 1, the term cultural facility has been attenuated in this report to the point where it no longer matches the original vision. 3 independent cinema screens would not equate to the new Clare Hall that was outlined to Mid-Sussex residents in August and September of 2023. I believe that the public will perceive things this way. Number 2, the report has drifted to a position where the viability issue has become solely a question of what operating model a potential anchor cinema operator, whether hybrid or other, is able to sustain. 3, the role of the cultural trust that was put to the public in building and sustaining support for other non-cinema arts and performance is absent from the report. Number 4, an option wherein a multi-use arts and performance space is integral to a new building alongside the anchor cinema operator and food and beverage operator does not form part of the report. I believe that such a specification could be delivered at a manageable delta to the overall space and cost requirements. I'm happy to provide data to support this assertion. I feel we need to include this option in the work. 5, the report does not contain explicit evidence for the conclusions that it recommends. In large part, its content is selected reportage of the underlying consultant work, often without full exposition of the industry context. For example, the build cost and the fit-out costs quoted. 6, and lastly, the underlying assumption that a multi-use arts and performance space will never be viable for a purely commercial anchor operator might be correct. However, that assumption has led to the exclusion of such a facility from the work. The support of such a capability is the area in which the Cultural Trust was intended to make a contribution. This omission undermines the vision for the new Clare Hall.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Councillor Edwards.
You are now.
Thank you, Chair. I did originally say that I had two questions, but on a rereading of the material prior to coming to the meeting, I've answered my own first question about the cultural operator. Thank you. So my second question was actually about the position as an asset of community value, and we're told that a further report on that will be made, and I would just like to keep an eye on this process from outside and wondered if we could have any detail of when such a report might be forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We can come back to you in writing on the asset of community value point. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chairman. I was an active member of this group and I enjoyed working with my fellow councillors and members in engaging. We had 5 detailed and constructive set of conversations that we had to follow. At the start, as based on what happened, when we talked to the market in the past about the existing building, we were concerned that we would have no interest from any operator. We were pleased that our advisors did have a lot of interest, and they came to meet and talk to us in one of our meetings we had. We had more meetings than we originally planned and did a deeper market engagement than we originally commissioned in the order to get the best procurement approach possible. I'd like to thank my fellow group members, the vast majority of whom back this approach. We need to now focus on delivering a new cultural facility at Clare Hall, and the first step is this procurement to find a cultural operator and partner, and I urge the Cabinet to press ahead so we get things moving for the people of Haywards Heath and the wider district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Let me go, first of all, to Louise Duffield to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. So this paper presents the next step in progressing the decision that you agreed last summer. As we set out at that point, building a new facility through a mixed-use scheme starts with having a cultural partner to deliver as an operator. The market responded positively to our soft market testing, something that we really weren't sure would be the case. We've carried out months of exploration with a range of offers, and we're cautiously optimistic that we can alight on a specification that will secure us a partner. The steering group also heard directly and through presentations from some of our advisors to understand the evidence and market feedback for the site. This is the advice which forms the reports in front of you. The steering group spoke strongly of their ambitions for a quality cultural venue, but that such a venue must be viable from the start in order for it to succeed. The papers before you set out the work done to explore the costs and challenges, and having heard from a range of advisors and cultural operators, we believe we've alighted on an approach that hopes to balance affordability with a high quality offer for the town. But this is not without challenge and risk, and we've set out clearly that there's still a chance this procurement may not succeed or may return an unaffordable outcome. Clearly, this is a report that's specifically about the procurement of a cultural operator, and this is just the start of a journey with many next steps. As you can see, the report's got lots and lots of detail, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Cook, I believe you're going to recommend this item before I open it up to wider debate.
Yes, thank you. I am very happy to propose that we note the matters outlined in paragraph 9 of this report, including regarding market engagement and risk. Also, that we should delegate the procurement procedure to the Director of Resources and Organisational Development. I am especially pleased to support the recommendation for a hybrid specification that will accommodate cinema and facility for live entertainment. This is an important distinction for Clare Hall and recognises the history of the venue while providing an entertainment and a modern cultural offering to satisfy Mid-Sussex residents for decades to come. To reach this point, we have all spent a huge amount of time engaging with the community, assessing community proposals, debating in cross-party committee and steering group, as well as Cabinet and Council. Not to mention the work put in by officers. I would like to thank the public, members, officers and advisors for their input. I believe that we have achieved the best procurement specification to move on to the next stage in providing a new Clare Hall. The venue will provide a range of interesting jobs and contribute a new focal point to the town to support local business. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to second it. And I'll allow colleagues to come back because this is a very important strategic decision that we're making today, and it's best that we give it as much airtime as possible. And my first observation is that we've spent months, or years actually, talking about the possibility of bringing a new cultural facility to this part of Haywards Heath. And there comes a time when, and through that process, in consulting with the community, but also engaging with a wide range of professional advisors across the industry, the analysis of data and the evidence clearly leads you into certain directions. And it's absolutely impossible for us to ignore the advice of the professional advisors, people who are experienced in not just delivering facilities of this order, but also running facilities of this order. And they've made it quite clear throughout the process, and people are right that the shape of the scheme has changed, but it hasn't changed on a whim. It's changed on the basis of doing the professional work and listening to what experience is telling us. And, I'm really grateful to the Working Party for the effort that they put in and the listening that they have done. And people also have to reflect and remember that we did take a sidestep to see if there was an alternative with a community proposal. And we've spent a long period of time, again, with our advisors, trying to see whether that was viable. And the reality was that no viable scheme came forward to replicate what is on that site now. And our professional advisors have indicated that the appetite for a cultural operator to run a mixed-use facility or a theatre-only facility is zero. And people may be uncomfortable with that news. People may be unhappy with that news, but that is the reality. And in the face of that reality, as a council and as a working party and a cabinet, we then try to shape something which is culturally relevant to Haywards Heath and the area. I do take a little bit of exception where people dismiss cinema as though it's not culture, and I'm sure people don't really mean that. But if you look at what we are trying to deliver on that site as a hybrid scheme, which includes cinema, will obviously include, because they do it all over the place now, live streaming of live events, and we are inviting a cultural operator to incorporate live events in it, and a food and beverage offering. I accept it may not tick every single box in this operator-led scheme, but it ticks a lot of them if we can deliver it. And I think we, as a working party, as a cabinet and as a council, have invested a huge amount of our time and energy to get something into a place which, as Louisa said, has still got some, there's still some vulnerability around procuring it, but we've got something into a place which is of meaningful value to this community. And there'll be communities up and down the country that would, grab this with both hands. So let's not be dismissive of the cultural offering that we're trying to deliver. When you look at this part of Haywards Heath, and what would be a multi-million-pound redevelopment in this area, and we talk about placemaking. If we can pull this off, this is a real placemaking opportunity for the town. And we all know that there are challenges along the way. I'd like to think that as a council, we don't run away from challenges. We face them, and we try to resolve them. But I really do believe that, this is going to, if we can pull it off, will be of significant value to the town and to the district. So I support these recommendations and look forward to the further work that will be carried out to hopefully take it across the line. Do any of my colleagues now wish to comment?
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I support the recommendation. I think the council's taking a stepped approach towards the replacement of Clare Hall, and noting, as has been mentioned, the previous extensive public consultation, and now the engagement with potential developers and operators, and the expert advice that the council has employed to get us to this stage. I think the appointment of a cultural provider gives us a viable way forward, and we need to remember this is based on the site value to leverage investment into the replacement for Clare Hall. So we may not satisfy every aspiration, but I believe this provides the best solution that has significant benefits for Haywards Heath. A cinema-based option, particularly if it can provide a live venue, would be a valuable addition to the cultural offering in the town and appeal to a wide range of age groups. The plan offers the prospect of a deliverable solution with the risks that have been outlined in the report, but with the aim that would provide a sustainable solution towards developing the cultural offering. And we need, as a council, we don't have a magic money tree. We need to deliver a scheme based on utilising the site value. But I think this remains an exciting opportunity to take forward the redevelopment of the site and has the potential for being an attractive venue for Haywards Heath residents, and for, as has been mentioned, to provide a cornerstone for that area of the town to take it forward. So I fully support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think it's something like 10 years since I used to attend regular meetings in Clare Hall as a member of the partnership board at that time, as the chair of MSELC, representing the parish councils. It was a tired building at that point, very clearly so, very clearly struggling in terms of what its future would be, as so many, I think, of our community buildings, sort of have, if we're not careful, are in that sort of condition. So I'm very pleased to see that we have a sustainable future for the building, that a solution has been put together, and I'm very pleased to support that and to see it down the next stage of this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs, or I do note that we do have an exempt annex on this. Do you want to speak now, or?
I'm happy to speak now.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo my support for this report. It's very difficult because the world has changed very quickly in the last 5 or so years, not least with COVID, of course, that closed Clare Hall and gave it its alternate purpose as a vaccination centre. But the market for entertainment, for leisure, has very much changed, and I reflect, interestingly, on Councillor Gibson's point that this was a building that was tired 10 years ago, and perhaps it had lost its way and its purpose then. But clearly what we have to do as a council is create a future for that venue that is going to be more robust, more robust than a council running it, where it's not its core service to run an entertainment facility. It's perhaps not even the last thing on the list that it should be doing. What we should be doing is leaving it to professionals, just like we've left it to professionals to do the research to come up with the solutions that exist within this report. So the world has moved on. The world of councils has moved on as well, of course. We have a budget that we agreed only 2 weeks ago, where we have to survive to deliver our core services based on contributions from investments that we've made in the past. And as Councillor Hicks says, we don't have a magic money tree. Of course, if the world was a different place and we did have a magic money tree, and you know, people wanted to spend their leisure time in different ways, and so on and so forth, then our positioning clearly would be very different. But what we have here is a sustainable proposal for the future, one that can be self-financing, and one that I recommend for acceptance.
Thank you. So we'll now go into the exempt items. So agenda item 6 is to consider whether to exclude the press and public from the meeting during consideration of the following items in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the said Act. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you very much. So if we could go to the vote. Who hasn't voted? Right, no, we're good. And that's carried. So we're now going to exempt. the recommendations. Thank you and welcome back, everyone. So we've duly considered the report and information in the exempt agenda item number 7, and we can now move to the recommendations in the report. So if I go back to Councillor Cook to formally move.
Thank you. I've formally moved that we support this recommendation. Vote in favour.
Thank you, and I'm happy to second that. So if we now go to the vote. And that is carried. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item number 8, which is the parking strategy for the larger village car parks. I will reverse the order and go to councillors. You're in the middle, Councillor Edwards, so you always come, you're second at the moment. So I'll go Councillor Marsh, Councillor Edwards, and then Councillor Kenny, if I may.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points, that's all. No questions, just a couple of points. Are you happy with the consultation that took place for this? As I understand, not all the villages, notwithstanding the organisation, but not all the villages knew this consultation was happening. But if you're happy with that one. And also, do you need to accommodate the workers of the shops and the other essential professional staff that work around that area? And I'm thinking about the medical centre, etc., 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 if there's some sort of accommodation for them. And I think that's about it, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I don't have any comments on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
I'm broadly in favour.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'll now go to Simon Hughes to introduce this item.
Thank you. The paper presents our findings and recommendations from our feasibility study on large car parks, car park management and enforcement in those large villages. The comprehensive technical studies and stakeholder engagement inform the report, and they highlight the wide-ranging needs of villages, whether it's from residents, local businesses, medical centre staff, visitors and community groups. And while some generally feel the current setup works, it also acknowledges difficulties for those specific groups. The report also identifies a common concern, which I know members will be familiar with, and that's enforcement to tackle dangerous and inconsiderate parking, and that's by far the most raised issue by residents and councillors. So the recommendations aim to address all of those challenges by introducing reasonable charges that would help manage demand, fund the car parks, and enhance and enable us to target on-street enforcement. The recommendations are set out in paragraph 14, and in summary, the recommendations balance the needs of different user groups while also targeting enforcement, and also highlight the need to develop policies to ensure that the system and the approach is fair and effective. And finally, a detailed equality impact assessment will be necessary to help develop clear policy for specific user groups across the use of the car park. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I will go to the portfolio holder first of all, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to propose that we do adopt the parking strategy for larger village car parks. And I wanted to pull out a number of points that our car park initiative addresses. It's interesting, isn't it, when you look at a whole basket of points and issues that you need to draw out the things that are most relevant, and what is most relevant perhaps to one user is different to another. And living in the village, living in one of the villages that is affected as I do and representing them as a district councillor, illegal and inconsiderate on-street parking requires enforcement, It's noticeable the number of vehicles that park on single yellow lines, on the pavement, on double yellow lines, making it difficult for pedestrians and other vehicle users. At the Mid Sussex District Council, we receive over 600 requests a year for enforcement support. Abuse of both the short stay on-street parking and the parking that's provided in our short and long stay spaces operated by the council. A need to balance the needs of all the car park users, so be that parents dropping their children off, short stay grab and go shoppers, those who want to shop longer, perhaps stay to have a hair appointment or lunch, shop workers, residents, as referred to earlier, people who want overnight parking or even long-term daytime parking, and in my village, commuters. It's really important that for the vitality of our high streets, and in my instance, Kemah Road, because I hate it being called the High Street, that we drive churn in our parking spaces to ensure that they're available for people who want to use them and that they're not just hogged and used all day. And very much the technology that we introduced, the parking disc, is outdated, it's difficult for non-regular users to understand, and it's not a flexible solution for our different users. Well, modern technologies now exist to help manage and police parking. That was identified for me most recently when we met relatives for lunch in Hurstpere Point, and they had no idea of how to operate the parking situation, where to park, whether they were long stay or short stay, whether they needed a disc to be in the long stay, and where they could even acquire the disc, because a number of the retailers had now closed down. One was closed. So, and finally, for the number crunchers amongst us, recognising that there's no such thing as a free car parking space, that every Mid Sussex District car parking space costs on average £400 a year to operate, and that additional enforcement that everybody wants in the villages is money that has to be funded from Mid Sussex District Council to provide. And so therefore I very much support the car parking proposal and I'm very happy to propose it.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to second the recommendations. The proposals follow the principles of the previously agreed parking strategy, which is around people wanting to be able to find a space when they need it, where they want it, and at a reasonable price that relates to their destination. This applies just as much to our larger villages as it does to our towns. And it's only fair that users of these car parks contribute towards their upkeep. The proposals map out a flexible pricing structure which shall enable us to invest in our car parks and trial new technologies that will benefit users. And take, for example, as has been mentioned, replacing the physical disc parking, which is outdated and discourages casual users. Implementation of this strategy to date has shown that reasonable increases in charges have not reduced demand for our car parks, and there's no reason to believe this will not be the case in our villages, particularly given the proposed policy shows an adaptable approach that responds to local needs. And this is against a background where the council is facing increased costs, which council tax alone is unable to fund, and therefore it's only right that users of our car parks in the larger villages contribute towards the cost of their upkeep. The 25-26 corporate plan, just agreed by the council, shows a significant funding gap after the forthcoming financial year, and it's important that we take action now to proactively ensure we can protect services, noting the significant lead time in implementing these changes, and that we will have another opportunity to review following consultation in the autumn. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Initially opposed, I have come round to this policy of charging for village parking. As has already been said, as a council, the largest number of issues raised by residents concerns illegal and inconsiderate parking. This is reflected in the mailboxes of councillors. In Linfield, for example, we have issues of people parking on double yellow lines, close to junctions, impacting on visibility, and buses turning corners. And especially pressing on pavements and double yellow lines outside the school. This revenue will fund more enforcement to change this behaviour. We have worked hard to mitigate concerns raised by parish councils and other stakeholders, and I am pleased to see that there are to be concessions such as the first hour free and various season tickets for residents and people working in the village centres. I am pleased to see that residents' overnight permits start at 4 p.m, which is a sensible time for people coming home, and last until 9 a.m. the next day. I have a couple of points I'd like clarification on, if that's okay, and I'd like to ask Simon, understanding that this detail may not yet be decided, but thinking of the 1 hour free parking, just wondering if we could consider allowing that to be used twice in a day to accommodate, for example, people dropping children to school and then coming back, 6 hours later to pick them up again. And maybe a scheme such as 1 hour free and no returning within 4 hours would work well. And the other point is just like a little bonus for people, really. I wonder whether the 1 hour free digital disc arrangement could cover all of the villages, because I understand it's available for all residents of Mid Sussex, so particularly people in the smaller villages that may go to different bigger villages for different things on a short-term basis, and also for people in the towns to make use of the village centres as well. So I just wondered whether that free disc could cover all 4 villages. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Yeah, so to answer your questions, we'll be investigating all options and how they're operationalised. Your point about drop-off and pick-up, that's something we've acknowledged in the consultation and understand. And we had some technical studies done and also some studies around the equipment that would enable us to do that. That was late last year. So we'll be looking at how do we enable those options and develop policies in order to administer them and operationalise them.
Thank you.
And that applies to both of your questions. So over the course, so depending on Cabinet's decision today, we'll be developing those policies that should address the issues that we've identified within the report.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Gibson?
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to say much on this, but listening to colleagues, I think I'd just like to comment as to how important it is to tailor these changes so that they do fit the local community needs. And just to relate an experience which I had on Saturday, that I joined the East Grinstead Town Council, the monthly, if you like, meeting with residents, giving them the opportunity. And one of the individuals said that they had a problem with parking overnight when they came back from work. He lived in the area which is covered by the CPZ. I was able to tell him about the annual pass, which exactly fitted his needs, from going from 5 o'clock until 9 o'clock the following morning. He said he would go off and investigate it immediately. I think the lesson we learned from that is that we do need to make sure that residents are aware of the opportunities which we've built into this to ensure that they can adjust in the best possible way, because clearly the gentleman had missed the particular information that was sent out on that. So thank you, very, very happy to support this.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments from me. I mean, it's not. I mean, I quite understand that if you lived in a village for decades and you've never had to pay for parking, how a parking regime may come as a disappointment. But the reality is, and I've made this point when we've looked at tariffs, and particularly the extension of the tariffs in the towns to Sundays and evenings, is that is the question I pose: is it right for one section of car park users to bear all of the burden of the cost of the car parks? In other words, the previous policy, which existed for many, many years, was we just charged Monday to Saturday in the daytime, and that was only where you went to increase your tariff. Is that fair on them, or is it fairer to spread that burden, number one, but number two, spread it in a way which reflects the needs of different communities? So whilst we are proposing to introduce a charge in the larger villages, these charges are modest, compared to some other places, and indeed compared to some other villages, places like Pulborough, Henfield, Stenning, Storrington, Southwater and Billingshurst, all charge in their village car parks, and the regime isn't as generous as we're proposing here. We're also reflecting on, a village, limited number of places, but in many respects the same sort of mix of needs that you would get in a town with many more spaces, coming up with a scheme where we're trying to provide a bespoke solution in the villages that hits as many needs as possible in a way that doesn't hurt the purse. The final point to make is that there is a process that we go to. So the final proposals come back to Cabinet in September. So there's more consultation work that will be carried out, and I'm sure during this process, officers will continue to fine-tune the proposals to make sure that we believe that we've got it right. And then, of course, as it's something new in the villages, I would expect that we will come back a year after the operation of this scheme to assess its impact, and if it needs changing after a year because something's not quite working, then I'm sure that we will look at that. But overall, I think I must congratulate the officers on the detail of the work that they've done and the way that they've tried to shape a package which works. I support these recommendations. So we've had a formal proposal and a seconder. So if there are no more comments, I suggest we go to the vote. And that is also carried. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 9, which is simpler recycling. And I will go to Councillor Edwards first, then Councillor Kenny, and then Councillor Marsh.
No, thank you, Chair. I don't have any comment or questions on this.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny. Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, you probably gathered because I used to be the portfolio holder for all that, so I welcome this approach. As I said in full council last, just when we did it in the last couple of weeks. Yes, it was thought out by myself and my predecessor, implemented by Councillor Belsey, John Belsey that is, and I'm pleased to say that your current cabinet carried it on. So I do welcome this approach, and additionally to the potential new venue, this is from a sustainable point of view, it just makes perfect sense. It cuts excessive mileage on our roads and our fleet and just takes carbon out of the equation. So I fully do hope you do go ahead and do this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to Simon Hughes to introduce this item.
Thank you. As Cabinet will be aware, we've successfully implemented the 123 recycling collection trial from 3,000 to 5,000 homes, and that's delivering us a recycling rate above 60%, and it has extremely strong customer satisfaction. And as has been said, I think the foresight from the council to invest in and deliver a food trial has meant that we've learned a lot about recycling, a lot about the most efficient way to scale, as we are required to do under the Simpler Recycling. For full implementation of 123, that means scaling from 5,000 to 71,000. And as you'll see from the papers, this requires investment in a depot. I think it's also important to say that our ability to sequence this with West Sussex County Council as the Waste Disposal Authority is critical for delivery of this across the whole of West Sussex. The report sets out the recommendations in paragraph 3, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. And I will go to Councillor Hobbs as the portfolio holder.
Thank you. First off, I would like to thank the officers for their work, firstly on the trial, and secondly, the tremendous amount of work that's gone into planning for the rollout. It's some massive effort to move from 5,000 to 71,000 homes, and not least at a time when the rest of the country is also making moves to introduce food waste recycling as it's now a requirement. So being ahead of the curve, making sure our vehicles are going to arrive in August, making sure our bins arrive through September, before prices go up, before surge demand is required us as a council to be well ahead of the game, and I thank everybody for their efforts in that area. Last night, as I walked through Hassocks after dinner with friends, I was pleased to count that 19 out of 20 houses had placed their food waste recycling bins out. And I really look forward to receiving mine and when we extend the trial into delivery. That will be in autumn, and like many residents, we'll be ready to go. So obviously to facilitate that, the depot is an absolute requirement, and it's fully outlined in the report, the reasons why, and I fully support it, and I'm happy to propose it.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second this. Just a few comments. I mean, clearly this is a major step forward, and Councillor Hobbs has already talked about the magnitude of the task. I think also this is going to be another area in which we need to make sure that residents are fully briefed on the expected changes. I think that the main resistance, which I think we might see in some areas, is really the comments that people are busy composting all their food waste and can't understand why anybody would have any food waste anyway, in terms of lack of consumption and so on. I think it might be just a question for the officers to the extent, I mean, we've commented about the position of sort of the opportunity to put a depot in an area which saves road miles. Saving those road miles is only going to work if subsequently we don't move the resulting collected food waste around the country or even off to another country. And I just wonder if we're tracking what's going on at the Langhurst Wood Biffa site in terms of the anaerobic digester that they're expanding their capability there, because clearly that's going to be an important part of the overall system that comes together. But yes, very pleased to second this and to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon, do you want to come back?
Certainly. We work closely with the County Council, and as you're aware, they're due to expand their ability to deal with food waste collections in May 2026, and that is close to their current depot, so that in Warnham, so that will tackle that issue.
Yes, of course.
Can I come back with just an aside? I appreciate it's a long meeting, but a lot of our current waste goes as, refuse-derived fuel, which just means it goes off to an incinerator and is burnt, which is maybe, it sounds good. But actually the calorific value of that is very much dependent on the food waste content. So that will, I suspect, will be earning less money in the future. Just an aside for...
Thank you. Any other members wish to comment? Councillor Hicks?
Can I just ask the officers if around the transition from the, in terms of the rollout of the service and opening the new depot, if they could say a bit more about it, whether that involves any risks in terms of how that process will be managed until the new depot is opened, please?
Yes, as you would expect, we have a comprehensive programme which identifies risks to delivery, and in fact a lot of the mitigations of the risks we've identified through our trials and through expanding the existing trials and by moving early. So we're working closely with the Waste Collection Authority so that we can scale up and manage those risks with delivery. We also, as Councillor Hobbs had said earlier, our procurement was deliberately targeted so we could gain bins and trucks prior to there being a significant demand. So again, we're managing the risk of delivery there.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy.
Okay, can I, I'm conscious that, we have an exempt item on this, and I just wonder whether we could go into exempt now, if you agree, and then if there are any other comments to wrap up before we consider the recommendation. So, if I may, agenda item 10, to consider whether to exclude the press and public from the meeting during consideration of the following items in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 on the grounds that involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 and 4 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the said act. If I may have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. If we could just vote on that. Who hasn't voted? We're 5, thank you. So that's carried. So we're in agenda item number 11.
I was only going to vote.
Sorry.
Oh.
Item.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We've duly considered the report information in agenda item number 11. Are there any other comments before we go to a vote? Councillor Cook.
I was only going to very quickly say thank you to Simon, Rob and Joe for all their work in this, and to say that I had quite a lot of households in my wards that were in the trial, step 1 and step 2, I think. And apart from a handful of initial queries and problems, I haven't heard anything from anybody for a long time. They all seem very happy, so thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no more comments, we can go to the vote. It's been proposed by Councillor Hobbs and seconded by Councillor Gibson. So if we may vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Which now leads us on to agenda item 12, Budget Management 24-25. I'll start again with Councillor Kenny, then Edwards, and then Marsh. Nothing? Councillor Marsh.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's good news, to be perfectly honest, in light of outside world of beyond Mid Sussex. I think we're doing really quite well. So, yeah, keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. To Louise Duffield to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm conscious we have a very large agenda, so I'll keep this brief. I think that the report sets out and reflects the hard work done to prepare for setting this year's budget, and therefore in the savings we've identified for that, we've been able to bring some of those forward. So we're in a strong position because we have taken some difficult decisions and we continue to be prudent. Beyond that, I think the report speaks for itself, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Councillor Hicks to introduce the item for us. Just one change to the recommendations. So in recommendation 6(2), instead of saying paragraph 12, it says this report. So it's a de minimis change. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm pleased to recommend the report and recommendation. The council is on target with its finances. The net underspend, as has been mentioned, based on savings programmed for the following year's budget, and of course this significant treasury management income, which has given us a lifeline to be able to provide the additional investment that we know is needed in terms of temporary accommodation, and indeed to pay for the additional consultancy work around Clare Hall. I'm pleased the performance reporting shows the council's largely on target in terms of delivery of services, and noting that the few indicators which are showing red have been satisfactorily explained. And we can therefore, I think, thank our officers for working within a demanding budget and meeting performance targets, whilst continuing to show ability to respond to new funding opportunities, as included in the report, and maximise the benefit to Mid Sussex residents. So thank you to our officers.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hicks. I'm happy to second this. It's two things. Very pleasing to note our decision to go back and do another round of temporary accommodation. We know how valuable that is to try and keep those at risk of homelessness in the community, rather than sending them out to bed and breakfast accommodation out of the district. I think this is a very good project, and I acknowledge my predecessors who kicked this off, and it's good that we're able to continue it and deal with the issue of homelessness in a very compassionate way. I think one question, because we know that there are savings, I think, you won't have it to hand, but I think it might be useful in a little briefing if we could identify what savings are generated through the temporary accommodation regime compared to B&B, because I think that would be quite useful information. And then the only other comment, of course, arising from the council when we set the budget, is the commitment in the Q3 report on coming back with a capital bid on the refresh of the signage, because I know that was important to members. So it's good to see that is included. But I'm happy to second any other comments. No? Okay, in which case we may move to the vote. And that's carried. We now go to agenda item 13, which is to consider whether to exclude the press and public from the meeting during consideration of the following items in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 3, 4 and 5 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act. I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Hicks. So if we go to the vote. And that is carried. Move to the vote. We'll be able to see it up there. Okay. So welcome back. We've duly considered the report and the information in the exempt item. We've put the recommendations up on a screen so that they can be seen. I'll just give one or two moments so that people can absorb them. It's been duly proposed by Councillor Hobson, seconded by Councillor Hicks. So we may go to the vote. And that is also carried. And that is the unanimously. That's the last item on this agenda. Thank you everyone for your kind attendance. This has been a good meeting with some very meaty policy issues. And I thank you all. The meeting's now ended.
Thank you,